The Civic Hour wasn't just another political talk show. It was a global stage where reputations were built or destroyed. That evening, millions tuned in from New York to Berlin, from Islamabad to London. The headline on every major platform: Read Richard Gere, live one-on-one on power, truth, and responsibility. Inside the downtown Washington studio, the air was heavy with tension. Cameras were in place. The host, seasoned journalist Priya Malhotra, straightened her papers, knowing tonight wasn't just another interview. Something felt off. Richard Gere walked onto the stage in a tailored black suit. He smiled politely at the crowd, calm, composed. The veteran actor had spent the past few years turning heads not for film, but for his vocal stance on global human rights and political integrity. His words had reached Congress, stirred protests, and made him a controversial figure. Among conservatives, the chair opposite him sat empty. Until, with just 2 minutes to air, a quiet shuffle broke the silence. Pam Bondi walked in. The audience murmured. Producers leaned forward. Even Gere blinked once, surprised. No one had told him, Pam Bondi, former Florida Attorney General and one of the most polarizing legal figures in the country, would be joining the segment. Her name wasn't on the rundown. Bondi didn't look nervous. Her stride was firm, confident. She wore a navy blazer, minimal makeup, and an expression that gave nothing away. She sat down with practiced grace and simply nodded toward Gere. Priya Malhotra began the show. Tonight, we speak truth to power, she said into the camera. 2 voices. 1 stage, real answers. The first 10 minutes were standard fare. Gere spoke about celebrity responsibility, misinformation, and the need for integrity in public discourse. His voice was soft, but his words cut deep. Spoke of systems built to distract the public and praised those who use their platform for truth. Without naming names, he criticized political figures who, he said, traded law for loyalty and justice for loyalty to one man. The camera cut briefly to Bondi. She smiled just slightly. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the kind of smile a seasoned prosecutor gives when she spots a weakness in the other side's argument. That smirk didn't go unnoticed. Backstage, one of the producers whispered into his headset, "Something personal's about to drop." Gere noticed it too. His tone shifted. He turned slightly toward Bondi for the first time. "Pam, you've defended policies that divided this country. You've stood by actions that, frankly, many consider undemocratic." He didn't flinch. "And you've used your fame to push one-sided narratives that ignore the complexity of real governance." There was no more pretending. This was no longer a joint interview. It was a confrontation. Gere leaned in. "People in power have a responsibility not to agendas, but to truth. And when I see public servants ignore that duty, I will speak out." Bondi's voice was calm. "Crute, Mr. Gere is not always what trends on Twitter. And those who live behind velvet ropes often mistake emotion for fact." The room was silent. Bondi continued, her tone controlled. "You speak of loyalty. I've seen loyalty save lives in courtrooms, in negotiations, in the quiet battles the public never hears about. But loyalty to the truth requires knowing the full story." "Do you?" Gere narrowed his eyes. "Are you suggesting I don't understand the truth?" "I'm suggesting," she replied, "that some people play hero without understanding the full script." There it was. It's a single sentence that shifted everything. The host tried to steer the conversation back, but it was too late. The tension had found its footing. "Let me ask you something," Gere said, his voice cooler now. "In 2017, during a lobbying case in Florida, your name appeared on documents linked to a firm operating out of Vienna, a firm later flagged by the EU. Was that loyalty too, or was that something else?" Gasps echoed from the control room. Bondi didn't blink, but her expression turned steel sharp. "That case was reviewed by 2 federal panels and closed. But let's not pretend you don't know that. They're all Your foundation received a grant in 2018 from an organization with the same backers. Now, the gasp was on Gere's side. You're deflecting, he replied. I'm connecting, she said, voice low. The host leaned forward. Are you both suggesting foreign influence played a role in these campaigns? Neither answered. But the silence said everything. Twitter exploded. Viewers posted clips with captions like, "Did Bondi just call Gere compromised?" He didn't deny it. Backstage, a junior producer stared at the live feed and whispered, "This isn't just a debate. This is an intelligence war." Back on stage, Bondi broke the silence. I don't need cameras to do my work. I've seen things that never make headlines. Sometimes the real story is buried on purpose. Gere looked shaken for the first time. What are you saying? I'm saying, Bondi replied, there's more to this game than either of us wants to admit. And tonight, camera is finally facing the right direction. The lights dimmed for commercial break, but the damage was done. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was exposure. The Civic Hour returned from commercial break to an audience sitting on the edge of their seats. Twitter was ablaze. Newsrooms from London to Karachi were already clipping segments. What had started as a conversation about celebrity activism had cracked open into something deeper, something darker. Richard Gere adjusted his collar, his expression tighter than before. Pam Bondi sat straight-backed, her hands folded neatly in her lap. But her eyes said everything. She was ready for war end. She had come prepared. Host Priya Malhotra cleared her throat, attempting to reset the energy. Let's refocus. Tonight's discussion began with political bias in media, but we've touched on something bigger. Influence, credibility, hidden networks. Ms. Bondi, would you like to clarify your last remarks? Bondi didn't flinch. I meant exactly what I said, she replied. There are powerful circles, media, politics, even humanitarian groups where influence is currency. And when someone like Mr. Gere criticizes loyalty, it's worth asking. Loyalty to what? To whom Gere jumped in. You accusing me of foreign alignment? Because that's reckless. I'm saying the world isn't black and white, Bondi said calmly. You speak as if moral clarity is a luxury all public servants can afford. But out there in courtrooms, behind closed doors, every decision affects real lives. And sometimes the choices aren't clean. The host leaned forward. Richard, would you like to respond to the 2018 grant she mentioned? Gere nodded slowly. The grant came from the Human Rights Partnership in Geneva. It was vetted. It was public. And the accusation that it's connected to the Vienna firm is a stretch. Bondi didn't let up. The same Human Rights Partnership received funding through a shell company tied to Mercury Capital. Based in Cyprus, same board members, same paper trail. Gere looked stunned. For a moment, he had no answer. Backstage, one of the Civic Hour producers whispered, "She has files." Indeed, Bondi reached into her briefcase and pulled out a printed chart. This was submitted to the Senate Judiciary Oversight Subcommittee in 2020, she said, handing the papers to the host. It outlines at least 4 instances where celebrity-affiliated foundations unknowingly receive funds routed through political intermediaries. Gere leaned forward. Unknowingly. Exactly. Are you suggesting we're puppets? Suggesting you're loud, Bondi said. And sometimes the louder someone shouts about corruption, the less they hear about their own reflection. The audience was dead quiet. For the first time, Priya hesitated. This is getting beyond. Personal, it always was, Bondi replied. Gere's tone changed. You want to talk about loyalty? I was in refugee camps when half your colleagues were attending donor galas. I've met children with nothing, and I've tried to bring their voices into rooms that never hear them. I respect that, Bondi said. But there's a difference between advocacy and accountability. Your voice carries weight, but weight without structure can collapse things. and your loyalty to political machines. Gere snapped. Where's the structure in that? Bondi turned toward him fully. You think my work is about parties? It's about systems, national security, legality. You see things through the lens of emotion. I see through evidence. Priya, realizing the interview had gone off script entirely, tried again. Pam, are you implying there's a global effort to influence American media using public figures? I'm not implying, she said flatly. I'm stating. Cameras zoomed in on Gere's face. It was the first time in years he looked cornered. Bondi continued. This goes beyond me. Or him. This is about who funds the loudest voices. Okay. And why? Political operatives, international banks, even foreign state actors, they know the fastest way to shift public opinion isn't A. Vote, it's a celebrity with a cause. The audience stirred. Gere responded sharply. So what's your angle, Pam? Why now? Bondi paused, and for the first time, something in her expression softened. 'Cause I've stayed silent long enough, she said. And I've seen too many good people, career officials, journalists, civil servants get buried under manufactured outrage. Some things need to be said, even if the room isn't ready to hear them. Silence. A studio staffer accidentally dropped a clipboard backstage. It echoed on the live feed like thunder. Gere's voice was suddenly low, tired. You've built a career defending institutions I believe are broken. And you've built a persona based on truth, she replied, while ignoring the shadows behind your spotlight. When the civic hour returned, everything had changed. Studio lights felt hotter, the air thicker. Social media feeds exploded with hashtags. Hashtag Bondi vs. Gere. Hashtag Civic Uncovered. Hashtag Who Owns the Truth. Journalists across networks were already breaking down every word. But inside the studio, only two people mattered, Pam Bondi and Richard Gere. Pam sat calm, as if she had planned this confrontation for years. Richard, usually confident, leaned forward slightly, his hands clasped tight. His voice, when he finally spoke, was quieter. I'm not your enemy, he said, looking directly at Bondi. Pam nodded once, her eyes not breaking contact. Neither am I yours. The host, Priya Malhotra, tried to guide the moment. Then perhaps we can go deeper. If tonight's debate is truly about influence, who's influencing? Who shouldn't we all ask ourselves how we got here? Gere sighed. That's fair. I've spent 2 decades using my platform to speak about injustice, Darfur, Tibet, Syria. But when you walk into those rooms, UN halls, refugee camps, Senate briefings, you realize you're being watched. And not just by the press. Bondi's voice cut in, firm but even. You're being measured. Every word, every donation, every handshake, it's all cataloged. Sometimes for good, sometimes not. Are you saying I've been compromised? Gere asked. I'm saying you've been targeted, Bondi replied. The room stiffened. By whom? Priya asked. Bondi turned toward the camera, her tone serious. There are lobbying networks, some foreign-funded, others pretending to be domestic NGOs that have quietly shifted how this country hears truth. It's not just about buying media time anymore. It's about buying messengers. And you think I'm one of them? Gere asked. I think you've been used, she said. And maybe ... you let them. There it was. The words hung heavy. Gere sat back in his chair, visibly processing. Do you think I let myself become a mouthpiece? I think you're smart enough to know when someone's handing you a microphone and why. Backstage, a junior producer whispered, Cut to audience, this is gold. But the director shook his head. Stay tight on them. We're in it now. Gere glanced down at the desk, then back at Bondi. So this is personal for you. She didn't deny it. 3 years ago, I opened a case against a consulting firm operating out of Brussels. They were funneling donations into what they called humanitarian media projects. The paper trail led to names I recognized. Actors, activists. One of them was a campaign your foundation publicly supported. Gere blinked. That's impossible. It's documented, Bondi said. And when I tried to investigate further, The pressure came fast, from both sides of the aisle. From editorial boards, from think tanks, calls stopped being returned. One senior official told me off record, "You don't go after Gere. He's untouchable." The audience gasped. Priya held up her hand. "To be clear, these are allegations. Mr. Gere, do you have any knowledge of this foundation's funding sources?" "None," he said. "We went through all the proper legal channels. I've never taken foreign money knowingly. Of my campaigns were copped a dial, find out." Bondi nodded. "That's all I ever wanted. Accountability." "But why bring this up now?" Priya asked. Pam paused. Then, in a voice softer than before, she said, "Because people are dying because of narratives. Okay. Because somewhere between real stories and performative outrage, we've forgotten who suffers. And I've watched good men and women lose their jobs, their reputations, and their lives for telling the truth." Her voice caught slightly. "One of them was my mentor. He worked the Brussels case. He died in a car crash 2 weeks after submitting evidence. The investigation was ruled inconclusive." Gere leaned in. "You think it was a hit?" "I think it was a warning." The studio went silent. For the first time, Richard's expression changed from defense to empathy. "I didn't know," he said. Bondi didn't smile. "You weren't supposed to?" The camera panned slightly. The host looked like she didn't know whether to continue or pause the segment. But something in the air said this had to keep going, Priya asked carefully. "So what happens now? Now that the world has heard this?" Bondi looked at Gere. "That's up to both of us." There was a beat of silence. Gere breathed deeply. "Then let's find out the truth. Together." Backstage, someone muttered, "This wasn't on the script." But in the control room, the executive producer whispered, "This is better than the script." And online, millions watched as a Hollywood icon and a controversial prosecutor stood not as enemies, but as two people pulled into something far more dangerous than either of them had expected. A game of power. And secrets. The kind that don't stay buried for long. The next morning, headlines exploded. Richard Gere and Pam Bondi call truce on live TV. But what's next? Shadow networks. Whistleblower hints at global media manipulation, truth or theater. Inside the Civic Hours bombshell interview, every network replayed the segment. Analysts debated Bondi's claims. International news picked it up, especially in Brussels, where the mysterious foundation she mentioned was allegedly headquartered. Some called it courageous, others said it was a PR stunt. But one thing was clear, something had shifted. Richard Gere didn't return home after the interview. He booked a quiet suite in a hotel on the edge of D.C. and spent the day making calls. His assistant, Marco, was swamped trying to trace financial records from Gere's humanitarian foundation. "They scrubbed the website last year," Marco said, frustrated. "Half the donor history is gone." Gere rubbed his eyes. "What about Brussels?" 3 connections, 1 shell company. It's all dissolved in the past 18 months. Find out who owned them. Meanwhile, Pam Bondi was already back in her office alone. She stared at an old folder, one she hadn't opened in over a year. It was labeled Case 19B Van Leer Network. Inside were handwritten notes, leaked email chains, and a blurry photo of a meeting in Geneva. Sitting at the end of the table, in that photo barely visible, was a man who once served as Gere's campaign advisor. Bondi flipped the photo over. On the back, in pencil, was scribbled, "They'll use him. He won't see it coming." She closed the folder. Her phone buzzed. It was an encrypted message from an old source. "He's digging now, but others are watching. Be careful." Across the city, in a dim conference room, a man named Julian Marr sat watching the interview replay. He wore a tailored suit and no expression. His job wasn't media. It was containment. And Gere's sudden interest in Brussels was triggering alarms. A younger analyst entered the room. "Sir, should we issue a statement?" Mar didn't even look up. No. Statements are for people who believe in sunlight. We work in shadows. Back at Gere's hotel, Marco burst in. I found something. One of the former board members of that Brussels firm, he just checked in at the Mandarin Oriental 2 blocks from here. Gere stood. Then so do we. 10 minutes later, they entered the hotel lobby under the guise of grabbing coffee. Gere wore a baseball cap low. Marco spotted the man, first mid-50s, thin, clearly nervous. He sat alone, sipping espresso and checking his phone repeatedly. That's Hendrik Voss, Marco whispered. Used to run their Eastern Europe outreach. Disappeared after the investigation started. Gere took a slow breath. Let's talk to him. But before they could move, 2 other men, tall, clean-cut, wearing identical navy jackets, approached Voss from behind. One placed a hand on his shoulder. The other showed a bad Swiss diplomatic credentials. They whispered something. Voss's eyes widened. Then he stood, grabbed his bag, and walked out with them. Gere and Marco followed discreetly. Outside, Voss was ushered into a black SUV. Gere caught a glimpse of his face, tight with fear. The SUV pulled away into traffic before they could reach it. To clean, Marco said. That was a pull, not protection. Gere was silent for a moment. Then they're 2 steps ahead. That evening, Bondi received an envelope at her apartment. No return address. Inside, a flash drive and a note. They know you opened the case again. If you go further, you'll need help. Play the video. Decide for yourself. She inserted the flash drive into her laptop. The screen flickered. A grainy video played surveillance footage from a parking garage to men loading boxes into a van. One of them was the same man from the Geneva photo. In the corner of the video was a time stamp one day before her mentor's car crash. Her hands tightened on the desk. Later that night, Gere called her burner phone. I saw one of them, Voss. He was taken. You think he's in danger? Bondi asked. I know he is. Bondi hesitated, then said, I got something too. A video. It shows the night before the crash. The man from Geneva is in it. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. Then Gere asked, how long until they come after us? They already are, Bondi answered. At that moment, in a nondescript office overseas, Julian Marr watched. Their call being transcribed in real time. He leaned back in his chair and lit a cigarette. Let them dig, he said softly. They won't like what they find. And somewhere in Washington, a third figure unseen in the spotlight dialed a secure line. Phase 2 just started, the voice said. We'll let them think they're in control. But Pam Bondi and Richard Gere had just made a decision. They couldn't undo. They were going to find the truth, even if it cost them everything. The next day, every major newsroom in D.C. was scrambling. Clips from the Civic Hour had gone viral, but something else was brewing leaks. Pam Bondi received an anonymous drop at her office, a manila envelope with 2 words stamped in red across. The front Echo Cell. Inside was a list of names, foreign bank accounts, and encrypted emails between members of a non-existent foundation registered in Brussels. One of the names hit her like a punch, Marta Lenko, a former diplomat who disappeared 2 years ago after testifying before an ethics commission. She had once reached out to Bondi for legal protection, then vanished. And now her name was linked to the same foundation that Richard Gere had once donated to unknowingly. Bondi called Gere, no greeting. Do you remember the name Marta Lenko? Silence on the other end. Then Gere replied, yeah, she helped my team get aid into Ukraine before the war started. She's on the list, Bondi said. So is a name that looks like one of your old board members. And there's something else. It's called Project EchoCell. Do you know what that is? No, Gere said quietly. But I'm going to find out. Later that day, Bondi met with an old contact at the DOJ, a cybersecurity analyst named Roland who owed her a favor. She showed him the documents. He skimmed through them, then looked up. This isn't political corruption, Roland said. This is infrastructure-level surveillance. These accounts are tied to shell companies embedded in media firms across 5 countries. They're buying influence, not headlines, entire narratives. Can you trace where it started? She asked. Roland nodded. You won't like the answer. Meanwhile, Gere flew to New York to meet with his former foundation's financial director, a woman named Elena Marin. She met him at a private cafe on the Upper West Side, visibly shaken. You should have never gone on that show, she said. I needed answers. You're not ready for the answers, Richard? Elena slid him a folder. Inside were internal memos from years ago, charitable donations approved by someone who had forged Gere's signature. The funds had quietly passed through a consulting firm in Brussels. One page in particular caught Gere's eye, a legal brief with a name at the bottom, Julian Marr. Who is he? Gere asked. Elena leaned in. He's not a lawyer. He's a handler. Back in D.C., Bondi dug into the paper trail on Marr. What she found shocked her. Multiple aliases, cross-border connections to Swiss banking operations, and a history of involvement in legal reforms tied to media privatization, all under different names. She typed his current alias into her case database. One match came up. Marr had once worked as a legal advisor on a foreign lobbying review for a congressional subcommittee. The same subcommittee where Bondi had testified 3 years earlier when she unknowingly dismissed Marta Lenko's claims as incomplete evidence. Her stomach turned. That night, Gere and Bondi met face-to-face in a quiet hotel lounge, their first in-person meeting since the interview. No cameras, no lights, just reality. I found Marr, she said. So did I, Gere replied. He's deeper than we thought. He's been working under fake identities for over a decade. He helped write laws he later exploited. And we've both been part of the machine without knowing it, Gere added. Bondi looked out the window. We can't go public with this. Not yet. The moment we do, we're targets. Gere nodded. So we build a wall of truth first. Name by name, piece by piece. As they strategized, news broke. A whistleblower in Brussels had gone missing. Her last known communication was an encrypted message sent to an American IP addressed back to Marco, Gere's assistant. Within hours, Marco was taken in by federal agents under suspicion of withholding classified information. Gere rushed to the federal building but was denied access. Pam called a contact at Homeland Security. I need him out, she said. He's not your threat. The ones pulling the strings are. Then give us names, the agent demanded. I will, she replied, when I have proof. Back at her office, Bondi received another message. This one wasn't anonymous. It was from Marta Lenko Live. Her email was simple. I have the Echo cell records. I'm in Warsaw. They're coming for me. Send someone you trust. Pam stared at the screen. She had trusted the system for years. Now, the only person she could trust was someone she had once debated live on national TV. She dialed Gere. You're flying to Warsaw, she said. He didn't ask why. He just said, I'm on my way. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, in a private compound outside Prague, Julian Marr met with 3 other men. One slid over a laptop showing Pam and Richard's latest location data. They think they're leading this, one said. Gave a cold smile. Let them gather. When the truth finally comes out, he said, no one will believe them. That's how you kill a story, not with lies, but with doubt. And far away, alone in a safe house in Warsaw, Marta Lenko stared out the window, waiting. The last truth she held could unravel everything, if she lived long enough to share it. Snow was falling in Warsaw when Richard Gere stepped off the plane. His scarf wrapped tightly around his face, he kept his head down. A local fixer met him at the airport, a former intelligence translator named Irana. No press. No posos, she said quietly as they moved through the arrivals gate. We take back roads. They know you're here. Gere nodded. How far to Marta? 20 minutes, Irana said. If she's still there? Meanwhile, back in Washington, Pam Bondi sat in a silent conference room, deep inside a government building. On the table in front of her was a list. 57 names tied to shell accounts judges, lawmakers, foreign policy advisors, all unknowingly linked to Project Echo Cell, all compromised. One name stood out, a senator she once clerked for, her mentor. The room felt colder. An agent entered the room. Your source in Warsaw sent a new file. It's encrypted. But she says it proves Mar worked directly with foreign intelligence to shape U.S. media laws. Pam stood. Where's the decryption team? The agent hesitated. That's the problem. Two of them just disappeared. We think someone inside's burning the chain. Pam's voice turned sharp. You need to secure the server now. In Warsaw, Gere arrived at the safe house, an old apartment near the river. The curtains drawn. Irana knocked 3 times. Paused, then once more. Marta Lenko opened the door slowly. Her face was pale, thinner than Gere remembered, but her eyes sharp and clear. I didn't think you'd come, she said. I had to, Gere replied. You've been carrying this too long. She nodded. I have something for you. Marta pulled a small metal drive from a hidden panel in the floor. She handed it to Gere. This has the original Echo Cell directive, she said, the full plan. Names, routes, timelines. It's more than money laundering. It's psychological warfare. Gere's hands shook slightly as he took it. Why? Me, he asked. Because you were the one face they couldn't control, she said. You had access to cameras. They thought you were too loud, but they never realized you were too smart. Suddenly, a phone buzzed. Irana looked at the screen. We have to move now. A car was seen idling outside. Too long, too still. They packed fast. Gere and Marta jumped into the back of an old sedan. Irana drove fast through tight, icy alleys. In the rearview mirror, 2 black SUVs appeared. They're tracking her phone, Irana muttered. We go dark now. She threw Marta's phone out the window into a passing bus's open hatch. Back in D.C., Bondi met with a private tech consultant, an expert in anti-surveillance architecture. His name was Theo, a quiet man who once worked inside the NSA. She handed him the drive Marta had sent earlier. Can you crack it? She asked. Theo plugged it in. His eyes scanned fast. Military-grade encryption, he said. But ... wait. Lines of code appeared. Then a video file. Theo clicked it open. A hidden recording played Julian Marr in a room with 2 senators and a lobbyist. Marr was speaking calmly. We shape perception, not laws. Laws are just cleanup. If the public believes a lie, truth becomes noise. The senators laughed. One said, as long as our names don't show up, keep the machine running. Pam's hands clenched. This, Theo whispered, could blow apart 5 agencies. We go to press, Pam said. No, Theo replied. They'll bury it. You leak it the wrong way, it dies. You need someone the people already believe. Pam thought hard, and then she knew who. In Warsaw, Gere and Marta took shelter in a small chapel owned by a family Irana trusted. Gere finally saw the full contents of the drive. Maps of media manipulation, fake grassroots accounts, blackmail documents on judges, and, worst of all, psychological influence templates used during elections in multiple countries. Not just influencing elections, Gere said, his voice low. They're rewriting memory. Marta nodded. That's the core of Echo Cell. If people forget what's real, they stop resisting. Gere's phone rang. It was Pam. Richard, she said. I saw the video. We need to release this together. He paused. I don't trust the networks anymore, he said. They'll spin it, edit it. Pam agreed. So we go straight to the people. Live. They coordinated fast. Pam's tech contact Theo secured a clean live stream channel through a Scandinavian server cluster. Gere contacted an independent media team he trusted from his activist work. The plan was simple. Go live at 8 p.m. Eastern. No edits, no cuts. They manned the files. But Mar wasn't far behind. From a location somewhere in the Balkans, Mar watched the live stream countdown begin, smiled coldly. The screen faded in, no opening music, no polished graphics, just Richard Gere and Pam Bondi, seated at a plain table. Their expressions serious. The simple white banner ran across the bottom of the live stream. Live Echo Cell Files. What? You were never meant to know millions were already watching. The comments flew in so fast, the screen couldn't keep up. Across Europe, news channels cut away from their regular programming. In the US, producers at major networks argue to do. They cover it. Or do they risk ignoring what might become the biggest political leak in modern history? Gere spoke first. This isn't about left or right, he said. It's about what's being done to all of us quietly, expertly, and in ways we don't even see anymore. Pam Bondi took over, her tone steady. We're not here to accuse without proof. Tonight, we're going to show you exactly how a system has been used, not to protect democracy, but to program it. She held up this small flash drive. This came from inside, from a network known as Echo Cell. They began to play video clips. First, the secret meeting between Julian Marr and 2 U.S. senators, laughing as they discussed shaping public fear to pass new surveillance laws. Then internal slides showing fake social media accounts used to steer public debates on immigration, healthcare, and even school policies. Charts showed which demographics to target, what phrases to use, and how often to repeat them before the lies became belief. Echo Cell's mission, Gere explained, wasn't just to sway elections. It was to change how people think, that truth becomes flexible and memory becomes optional. Next came footage of an encrypted server room in the Balkans one Marta had risked her life to document. Inside were thousands of deepfake videos waiting to be deployed. Some of politicians never involved in crimes. Others of innocent journalists smeared just enough to discredit their work. Pam paused before the next segment. This one hurt, she said, because it showed me how close I came to being used myself. A leaked email appeared on screen, Bondi's name in the header. It was a proposed op-ed written for her by a media consultant she'd never hired. The topic? Defending a controversial financial bill, one she had never supported. Yet the plan was to publish it under her name through a friendly outlet and use bots to push it viral. I never saw this version, Pam said, but if I hadn't caught it, the system would have made it truth. That's how subtle they were. Gere leaned forward. Ask yourselves, how many articles have you read that were planted like this? How many public figures had their voices stolen without realizing it? The chat exploded. People demanded answers. Names trended. Hashtags like #EchoCellTruth, #MarLeaks, and #MemoryWar spread across every platform. Then came the part no one expected. A file marked Black Sites Education opened. Inside were records from 12 nations, including the U.S., funding psychological testing in schools without parental consent. The research wasn't about improving learning, it was about identifying personality types most susceptible to influence. They were building maps, Pam said, her voice low, which children might resist manipulation and which could be guided. The stream shook the world. Within 15 minutes, a major senator from Florida resigned. France's interior minister called for an emergency EU intelligence summit. An anchor at a major American network broke into tears on air, admitting she had unknowingly read a script shaped by Echo Cell. But the reaction wasn't all support. Government accounts called the livestream deeply irresponsible. State-linked media in some countries cut the broadcast entirely, replacing it with pre-recorded cooking shows. And somewhere in Zurich, Julian Marr stood by a large digital wall displaying sentiment maps. It'll pass, he told his assistant. People want shock, not change. But Marr had underestimated something. Gere didn't stop at the stream. An entire archive was released, documents, video files, internal chat logs, metadata. Everything. No filters, no middlemen. Pam coordinated with lawyers across 6 countries. Marta disappeared again. Her final message: let the light do its work. In the days that followed, the world began to shift. Teachers held emergency town halls. Students demanded transparency about their data. Former government officials came forward with confessions. And in a moment that shook Washington, an anonymous judge released a sealed memo confirming that a Supreme Court draft decision had been altered due to pressure from a now disgraced lobbying group linked to EchoCell. Still, not everyone believed. Some called it just another stunt. Others questioned Gere Bondi's motives, but something had changed. Not just the headlines, but the air itself, the way people looked at their screens, the way they listened. A new awareness was growing. In a quiet park days later, Richard Gere met Pam Bondi one last time. They sat on a bench, no cameras, no staff. Just 2 people who had stood on opposite sides of America for years, somehow found a shared truth. Pam looked ahead. "Do you think it'll last?" she asked. Gere thought for a moment. "No," he said. "Not unless people wanted to." She nodded. Then we keep reminding them. And as the sun dipped below the trees, somewhere in the world, another server lit up this time. Not to deceive, but to archive what had just happened. Because now the world remembered. And memory was the one battlefield EchoCell no longer controlled.